Hey, it's Drybear. We're continuing our series of covering all of the weapons in the First Descendant, trying to bring out the best of each weapon based on what their base stats are or what they're exceptionally good at. And today, we're going to look at 4 assault rifles that fall into the same grouping outside of Eternal Willpower and the 2 ultimate assault rifles, which all have their own specialties and different stats. The other 4 assault rifles are actually quite similar, and this is the build we're going to run with today. Now, this is kind of a special case. We didn't really have any of this, and this might be the only time we have this. We might end up running into this kind of niche case for like maybe the scout rifles or maybe the tactical rifles in that situation. But unlike the machine guns, which scale extremely well with max rounds, mental focus, and elemental, I don't think there's any really other build to run for those. For these 4 assault rifles, Ominous Hound, Caligo's Horn, Magnus AA, and Phantom Pain, their claim to fame is that they have exceptionally high accuracy and rather low recoil as well, which makes them a perfect fit for the mod Real Life Fighter. Now, if you're familiar with Real Life Fighter, it is a mod that is kind of a little bit too much. So what this does is it actually gives you upwards of 100% firearm attack, which is, if you didn't know, one of the 4 global scalars in the First Descendant, alongside weak point fire rate and shell capacity. These are stats that get applied to their full value based on where they sit in the equation and the weighting they have. Firearm attack just has that. More firearm attack equals the same amount of percent increase of DPS at the end. And so Real Life Fighter is one of the best mods in the game, but it also comes with a lot of downsides, and not every weapon can run it. So the way Real Life Fighter works is when you hit a weak point, you will get a stack of the mod buff. If you hit a weak point again, you can stack it up and stack it up and stack it up and get up to 10 stacks, which gives you the 100% firearm attack increase when the mod is fully maxed out. However, if you ever miss a weak point, like you don't hit a weak point, you'll notice the stacks next to my head there, they go down by 2 every single time you miss. So for some weapons like SMGs, where you can get really close to the weak point and rail into it, and some weapons where they can sit relatively decently at a distance, they can deal damage and scale that up. If you can successfully scale up Real Life Fighter and keep it stacked, it is one of the best, if not the best module that you can run for pure DPS output on any weapon. But because these 4 rifles come with such insanely high accuracy and base recoil, it means that you can sit at their effective range, which is a base 30 meters. So if he's standing here, each one of these is 10 meters. We can go 10, 20, and 30, which means that I can have near perfect accuracy at this distance with these rifles. They are unbelievably accurate and precise when you run the right mods and you have the right setup, which means that there isn't really, like, realistically, there aren't many situations where with these rifles, with the right mods, you can't keep Real Life Fighter stacked up to its maximum or close to its maximum at almost all times. Even when you're killing just basic mobs, they all have weak points that you can slam into. If you're killing a Colossi that has a weak point, it's very easy with these weapons to keep a very tight spread of bullets on the weak point to scale up Real Life Fighter, and most weapons can't boast that kind of pinpoint accuracy. Machine guns, even some of the submachine guns struggle with it, and some of the beam rifles, even though they have perfect accuracy, can get a little wild. But these are just so controlled, so precise, so powerful that this build for these 4 specific rifles, and by the way, if you are curious, Caligo's Horn, as of right now, unless they balance change anything, is the best of these 4 rifles. So if you're looking at the 4 that you're looking at with this build here, we have these 4 rifles: Magnus AA, Phantom Pain, Caligo's Horn, and Ominous Hound. They all have about the same, but Caligo's Horn scales the best out of all of those. So you could run a very simple, very straightforward build with this, and you actually don't even need to run element swapping for this as well. If you didn't know what element swapping is, it is the idea that you don't catalyze anywhere from 1 to 3, maybe even 4 slots at the end here for your weapon, and then you just swap out the correct element for the encounter you're running. This is a very powerful effect, especially for machine guns where you're doing really high firearm attack, scaled with the bonus damage for the elemental. And there's still a lot of testing that needs to go into the elemental at all, but it is a very high damage increase. However, I recognize not every player wants to run that way. Some people don't want to swap in and out mods, and these are some of the only weapons in the game where you can just lock out all 10. Like, you can actually slot lock all 10 of these on these rifles and be perfectly fine. And they're super flexible because you can play at most ranges with almost full drop off, like 100% or 90% close for the effective range, get that damage out of it. You can stack up real life fighter almost anywhere in the arena, which is really nice. And they're just very reliable, very straightforward. Now, the caveat here is that we're going to take up some really big gains on damage output from action and reaction and have aiming. Two of some of the other very, very high value, almost unethical, like almost disproportionate action and reaction have aiming, have very, very, very high damage scaling, and they pretty much make their way into almost every weapon build in the game right now. However, they do come with minus accuracy and increased recoil, which to get the full value out of real life fighter, we're going to need to be able to counteract that with some other mods in here. So I ran a bunch of different scenarios running with some of the purple mods that have recoil and accuracy, different levels and varying levels of these to try and get the right combination that would counteract that. And honestly, in order to take advantage of the effective range that these weapons have and the base accuracy these weapons have, it's much better just to run a bunch of blue mods to take advantage of this. And in this case, I think you run Hawkeye and Vibration Absorption. This will give you the accuracy up you need to be perfect all the time and the recoil down that you need in order to be perfect all the time. And with Hawkeye, have aiming, Vibration Absorption, action and reaction, and real life fighter, all of these put together, you can just, it's almost like just perfect pinpoint accuracy, hitting on the weak point over and over and over and over and over. And it kind of creates its own unique playstyle, which is pretty fun too, which you can't really create with anything other than maybe sniper rifles are the only thing. But sniper rifles don't have this kind of crazy fire rate, right? So it's a very, very fun playstyle to play through. On top of that, we're going to run with some of the very basic blues that help scale this weapon up. They don't have any downsides on them. Weak point sight is always going to be a really nice add, and so is rifling reinforcement, and so is fire rate up. So very vanilla, very basic here for these four weapons. Fire rate, weak point attack, and also firearm attack are global scalars, so there's always going to be good value. And then to round this off, you want one reload mod and one maximum rounds mod. The reason for this is the time to empty on these four rifles is about moderate. They don't have enough rounds to make it take advantage of the mental focus mod. Like, they're not quite high enough like the machine guns to take advantage of that, so we go with real life fighter instead. They don't really have a massive reload time. Like, if we start going into like eternal willpower and the stats there, the reload time is much higher, so you get some different stat weightings based on what those do for the weapon. But I think in this case, getting one recycling genius maxed out and one expand weapon charge maxed out gives you a much bigger throughput than any of the other available stats, including crit damage and crit percent. If you want to run crit with these, they have a base of about 9% crit rate, which means that they have just enough crit rate where you actually get okay value. If you want to run better concentration, a blue crit damage mod on this, just running crit damage, even with the base 9%, is an okay damage throughput increase. I wouldn't run any crit percent, like crit chance on this, unless you're running some of the characters that have it. So if you're running Enzo or you're running Valby, which have the additive buffs that scale up the crit chance by a flat amount, can work great on these. So if you want to run Enzo with this pinpoint build, you actually would just make this build better overall without having to add any crit damage or any crit chance on top of it. You would just have that buff. Or if you have an Enzo in your group, that works really well too. But this is the build for Pinpoint ARs. I think they're super fun. Now, they are going to get outscaled by Eternal Willpower, Fallen Hope in the right situation, and they might actually even outscale the Divine Punishment. But in this case, it is so easy on some fights to just sit at a very comfortable distance and just slam into the weak point with perfect accuracy and just get stacks and stacks and stacks of this. I also really enjoy weapons that don't have to do the elemental swapping, because sometimes you forget, sometimes you join into a public matchmaking, you forgot to swap it out. But for these, very simple, very straightforward, very business there. So what I'd like to do, we're going to continue on and doing some. We have one SMG that we missed, the Python. We missed one Enduring Legacy for the machine guns, and we also have 3 more rifles to look at. Fallen Hope, the Fallen Hope, Eternal Willpower, and Divine Punishment are all special cases that need to be looked at separately from these builds, but this is the build for the Pinpoint ARs. Let me know what we should cover next down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.